Facebook again.
Sure.
And I'll do Instagram.
We're
Hey
live.
guys, we are live.
Another week.
Hour. Let's go.
Lunch hour.
Lunch hour. Hey Instawebs, what's up? Hope everyone's going well.
Let's see. Make sure not showing up on the group yet.
We are here though, so that's cool. Oh, we don't need any sound. Hey Instawebs, when you guys jump in, say hello. Glad you guys are here.
Still nothing on Facebook.
Three people are on.
I don't see.
3 people are on, but you're not on.
Apparently not.
Michael is not one of them.
Well, hello, new people that are on Facebook that I can't see.
We have 3 people on Facebook and 3 people on Instagram.
Perfect. Welcome, guys. Thank you
What
so
up,
much for coming by.
My dude Milton just jumped into Instagram.
Oh,
What up,
snap.
what up? Hope all's well. As we get our technical stuff worked out, we had
I see. We're not live in the group, but we live on CLT Buyers in general. More people.
what is that,
It's
the
all
page?
good. Yeah,
The page instead of the group?
it's all good.
That's fine.
That works better, probably.
That works. Okay, so we had office hours. Who was this I'm kicking? Oh, I'm kicking one of the pups. That works. Had office hours this week. How did that go? What did we talk about?
Well, this week went well. I mean, we talked a lot about AI, ChatGPT, Bard, just a lot of tools that we can use in the AI space to kind of make our lives a hell of a lot easier. Of course, we talked about a whole bunch of other stuff too. We had the weekly talk about subject twos, and
Again.
we were able to kind of discuss a little bit about marketing channels and all that. But I thought yesterday was pretty cool because AI is brand new. It's not something that has been adopted by a ton of people in any space, let alone this space yet. But I think it's something that's very quickly coming, and the quicker we can get started on it, the greater advantage we'll have down the road.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. Thought we had a good week. Pretty good turnout again, which has kind of been pretty consistent lately.
Consistent now.
Love seeing that. Got a deal locked up yesterday. So it's been a good week.
New contract with us, seller.
Yep.
A new assignment yesterday, a new assignment today.
You're right. I forgot about the assignment today.
So, yeah, pretty good week. Things are moving.
Pretty great week.
Things are moving along.
So last week we were kind of a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
Probably not our best prepped power hour, but that's okay. This is only the third one going. So let's kind of jump into a little bit of what we talked about yesterday. I definitely kind of led the discussion because I interact with it so much, but I'd actually be interested in your feedback on what you thought, how it went yesterday, as someone who definitely understands it, but maybe isn't in the weeds with it as much on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so
And also remember, our team told us that we have to look at those cameras.
we have to look at the cameras, not at our laptops. We got yelled at last week for it. So I think, the conversation yesterday was really interesting. I think a number of people who were here understand the importance of AI and are trying to implement it in our business. Some of the folks who are here, I think, were probably a little overwhelmed by the breadth of what you were trying to talk through and cover. When you describe that tools like Bard and ChatGPT can really help in every facet of the business, you're kind of not exaggerating that. Like, that's really what can occur there. So that's pretty cool. But I think there's going to be a delineation ultimately between businesses who are successfully deploying tools like AI in their business and businesses that aren't. And those businesses that aren't are simply going to be outrun by the businesses who are deploying this stuff effectively. Just in the simplest time-saving ways, preparing a presentation, preparing, like the handout you had for yesterday's meeting was prepared with AI. So I think that'll be one of the main things we see, and was cool. Anytime we're sitting down to generate content, think about something, put a presentation together, create the framework of an outline, all of that stuff, a tool like Bard or ChatGPT should be at least getting us off the ground with.
I agree. I think one of the nice pieces of it is it feels very overwhelming because it can do almost everything. So
Right.
where do you start?
Right.
But even if you don't start in your business right away and start just using it to even make your personal life outside of work a little bit better, there's some really big advantages in terms of time saving, as you were mentioning, that we can't even really begin to quantify.
Yeah.
Just like one example, of course, is there are plugins with Instacart and other food opportunities or plugins on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So like today I was just playing around with it and it was able to create an entire weekly meal plan schedule broken down by like macronutrients per item, listed it for the entire week, and then it just asked me, do you want to add these items to your cart? And I just clicked yes, and it actually went on to Instacart, went on to Publix, found everything, added it to my cart. And then all I had to do is go on and click submit, and it would have been delivered to my door.
And it's like pay right there on the spot.
Pay right there on the spot, and it would have saved me 30 minutes of driving, an hour and a half at the store.
Even selecting the items on Instacart
For sure.
would have taken some time.
Now I did have to fix like one or two because ChatGPT said I was going to eat baked salmon, but Publix doesn't have baked salmon. But
Right.
again, it's like, so it would have taken an hour and a half to 2 hours. Now it took me 5 minutes of making sure that the order looks right.
This is like you shared yesterday, using ChatGPT to understand a 1031 exchange versus a reverse 1031 exchange, and the feedback you were getting, it got confused and kind of gave you the same for both, right? So a lot more of what you're doing is just auditing the information that's presented versus just generating it in mass.
That's right.
Which is cool.
What else did you find maybe interesting about the conversation yesterday? People had a lot of questions. There was also a bunch of silence from the brain melting, but
You could kind of smell the brain melting definitely from the engagements.
that's right.
When you get to the end of a presentation, you say, "What questions are there?" And everyone, their eyes are kind of glazed over. You're like, "Yeah, we might have gotten pretty detailed there." But yeah, I don't know, just the way that the apps are evolving. So Zillow has its own app now within ChatGPT and things like that. That I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and Travis kind of just mentioned it, and we brought this up yesterday during office hours, of just a great way to start implementing it is just by making ChatGPT your homepage.
Yeah.
So when you log on and your first instinct is to Google something, just try it in ChatGPT first and see what the answer comes. I think you would be surprised at how much better and more eloquent the answer is with ChatGPT compared to filtering between Google links.
Yeah, agreed. And then you made a great point yesterday about how you can guide AI to give you specific focused advice, as in giving the prompt, ChatGPT, I want you to act as, and then in the case we gave, a Salesforce consultant and give me this feedback, or a marketing consultant and give me this feedback.
Yep. I mean, if I don't have to sit on the phone for 30 minutes to get online with a representative to help me,
Yeah.
in 90% of the cases where all of those answers are published somewhere and ChatGPT is able to compile them all and give you the best step-by-step answers, I mean, I'd want that. Wouldn't you want that? Like,
Right.
it seems like a pretty easy answer. You just need to learn how to talk to the system properly to get the answer you're looking for.
Right. So that was, as far as like the AI conversation, I thought those were some of the most.
What did you think about the content creation part of it?
Okay, so you actually, I learned something yesterday while we were sitting there.
snap.
So, okay, so for those of you who weren't able to join us, if you go into one of these tools and say something like, can you give me the 25 most, posts that are going to create the most engagement within the real estate investment space? it'll give me 25 ideas. So that I knew. That wasn't anything, a new learning for me. But you can go as far as say, and you demonstrated this, and that was the learning, to say, can you place these items in a content calendar? And it did that. It made it a list. And then, can you create a table of this, which actually literally creates a calendar? That was like, for me, even for me, I was like, oh, that's really, really cool.
And I think part of it is we've been trained to ask for an answer and Google spits out the best answer it can. But I can't go to Google and say, this answer isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas with an AI learning language model, you can, because it's constantly trying to improve itself and how it can communicate with you. So next time we asked it to put it in a table format.
Yeah.
Next time if I ask for the same thing, it will know to put it in a table format because that's what I've requested in the past. So pretty damn cool.
Yeah. So Jonathan, one of our buddies, he says, okay, so, and this is what he said. He said, so okay, playing devil's advocate, do you guys feel that that AI, if not filtered properly, businesses could miss out on authentic opportunities because you lean more towards the well-polished AI opportunities? And I think, are there opportunities that get missed when you don't have time to filter through every single potential?
Of course.
I think the answer to that is yes. We would say that in our business today. We run a shotgun-based approach, and do we miss some opportunities because we can't go quite as deep or as narrow as we want? I think the answer to that is yes. I think the upside of the business makes that really easy to bypass, though.
Yeah, like I love sports analogies, of course, and I think the best example of a question like this would be answered through baseball. There are going to be times where there is a fastball right down the middle that you foul tip. And it's something that you absolutely should have hit a home run on. It's something that was an easy opportunity, but you missed it because you were focused on something else, your timing wasn't exactly right, whatever it may be. But just because you foul tip strike two doesn't mean that you still can't hit a home run or a single or a double on strike, on the next pitch. So are there opportunities that we could miss because we're trying to chase the polished ones? Absolutely. But if those polished ones bring us enough revenue where we're not hurting from missing the other opportunities, it's more of a build on scale versus a back and forth. I missed this, let me try this, let me go back and forth.
Yeah. And Stas makes a point. Those missed opportunities, he says this, he says, that's why there will always be opportunities for everyone that keeps their eyes open. And he's right about this. There are opportunities for folks who are operating at a more focused level, and there's opportunities that come from someone who's operating at more of a wide scale.
Which is why bandit signs still work.
Absolutely.
Not every single marketing channel can hit every single person.
That's right.
And we've run into it before where there are people that just don't like calling. There are people that don't like mail. And sometimes we'll miss people on those opportunities, and that's okay because we're still getting enough in our target audience for now until we can potentially grow it further down the line.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So yeah, I just thought the conversation yesterday was great. I thought it was great that people had brought their laptops and were ready to engage and ready to test it.
Absolutely.
For those of you who watch this later, definitely make sure when you're coming to office hours, you guys are bringing your laptops. You're jumping on our Wi-Fi, doing whatever you need to do there. So that definitely is part of the deal. Do you have any other questions here that we need to answer? Because we had a couple of questions submitted beforehand.
Yeah, I've got a list of ones beforehand, but Travis gave us that suggestion. Carolina said hello right as we started, so hello Carolina. But other than that, haven't gotten so much on the Facebook side, but it looks like Instagram's been pretty popular.
Yeah, so we're actually getting a question which actually happened to be submitted in advance as well, so I don't know if that's exactly the same person, but it's obviously a question that gets pretty often. So the question is, what's the best way to fund deals for first-time investors? How do you want to?
Yeah, well, my first question I would ask is, are you a W-2 employee or not?
Why does that matter?
Because if you're a W-2 employee, you are viewed as much more favorable in the eyes of a bank because you have consistent income. They can check your income records, making sure that they feel confident lending to you. If that is the case, I would want to take advantage of being able to work with lenders, conventional, that could offer me a 3.5% down payment if I wanted to house hack my first home, or would allow me the ESA financing where I don't have to pay higher interest rates by working with hard money or potentially private money.
Right.
If I didn't have and one of the cool things about a W-2 is there's a certain amount of conventional mortgages you're allowed to get.
Right.
It's not just one. I think it's 5, but I've heard differing
Each
numbers.
lender has different requirements, but 5, 10 are some limits that are in place.
That's right.
Yep.
So I would want to take advantage of those before I were to leave my W-2 if I went back in time. But if I didn't have a W-2 and banks don't look at me quite as favorably, I'd be talking to hard money lenders if it's a fix and flip opportunity. I'd also be trying to build up relationships with private lenders, people who have capital in their bank account that's earning what 1/100% interest right now.
Right.
You can offer them an opportunity to make a really nice return for not a long amount of time with their capital. But if you're looking for something a little bit more long-term, maybe a rental, a good product out there is called a DSCR loan, which stands for debt service coverage ratio, which basically means that it's underwritten based off of performance, not off of homes in the area. So if I'm able to rent a property for $1,500 a month, and then the lender for the DSCR company determines that their monthly payment would only be $1,200 a month, then that loan would qualify and I'd be able to cash flow the difference. So those are some really cool tools for people who are looking for first-time funding, but it's not just first-time funding. We still use these tools today.
That's right.
And we always talk about building relationships with private lenders and using private lender capital, which is amazing, but remember, it's a private lender's job to put their own capital to work, and we're not always the only person that they work with. So there will be times when we don't have private lender capital available, and we have to start taking some of these other routes more frequently.
Which is one of the reasons why it's important for everybody on this stream, everyone over on the Facebook side, you need to be creating these relationships early in the journey. We talked...
I'm going to interrupt for a second, but we constantly talk about creating relationships.
Yep.
What is that? Like, I just go to you and be like, hey man, you got money to lend? I got a project.
Yeah, I mean, like, the elements of it, yes. Like, the chances of someone saying yes to that the first time you bring it up is probably pretty low.
But what if I need to get my project funded?
Well, then you better have a lot of those conversations. You know, a sports analogy is when you're first learning to hit a ball, your batting average probably isn't really great, right? So you need to take a lot of swings. And one of the mistakes, where I was going to go was, one of the mistakes we mentioned, so 2 weeks ago at Office Hours, we talked about the 5 mistakes we've made in our business. And one of the mistakes was not continuously raising capital consistently enough. And that's weird for us to say because we've been pretty consistent at it.
Sure.
And so how much more for folks who are getting started do they need to be having these conversations? Do they need to be open to partnering with people? Even if the private lender doesn't want to just fully fund the deal, maybe they'll partner with them and help them get the deal put together. Maybe they could partner with someone like us who can flex their balance sheet and their experience when that person's just bringing the deal. So I think there's just a lot of ways to get a deal put together that sometimes gets overlooked.
Perfect. Travis followed up question, where do you get DSCR loans?
Yeah, so the DSCR has become a pretty common loan category. So most hard money lenders are offering that as a product today. Two of the hard money lenders that we're using most often over the last kind of year is Kiavi, Kiavi, and then Aloha Capital. If anyone wants a connection with either of those two organizations, you can DM us, and we'll do our best to get you connected with the folks over there. So, yeah. Renard is asking, this is a great topic, would love to hear your exact pitch. What's up, by the way? Tell me a little bit more. I think you mean for the private lending side, but happy to talk about that. Just jump in and just clarify that in a comment for me, and I'll jump into that. But Well, let's just assume that's what he means. And
No, let's make Bernard engage on our post. Help us out.
Help us out. Give us one more post. Okay, so we also had a question beforehand that kind of is two things that come together. And then I have a follow-on to it as well. But, on the lending side terms. Okay. Should we go? All right, let's go there first.
Yeah, no,
We'll go there first.
Yeah, he got the question in first. You want me to just be the lender?
Yeah, so that's fine. So, generally speaking, the approach is really casual. So we're like, yeah, I mean,
You're just gonna go to Boxcar Betty's and get a chicken sandwich, right?
sometimes, yeah. But we're gonna say something like, yeah, I mean, we operate a real estate investment business. Generally, we're matching people's capital with favorable returns secured by real estate. If you're ever interested in learning more about that, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you. And normally, the first time we drop that, there's no real response. It's just like, okay. And then that grows over time. The real pitch is, hey, Michael, I know we've talked about capital requirements a couple of times. I know you've got something in the range of like 60 grand. We actually have an opportunity that might meet that. Is that still capital you're looking to place?
Yeah. So I think this approach is very good for someone who already knows you like to borrow money.
Yeah.
Or someone has presented themselves as a lender. I'd say the approach is probably a little different for every other person you meet in the world, because every person that you meet in the world is a potential private lender.
Yes.
Right? Based off of the ability to build a strong relationship. And I think sometimes if you come right out and say that you're looking for money, that gives me like a, whoa, why the fuck do you need money the second you met me?
That's right.
That's not a good first impression, right? But you want to pique their interest. Make it sound like what you do is so unbelievably special that they can't not know more.
That's right.
So like for a lot of times when I'm talking to people, it's like, yeah, so what I actually do is I buy off-market properties to build portfolios of real estate, and I use private lenders' money to give them a above-market return on their investment.
Yep.
And I just stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what does that mean? Like, tell me more. Like, what is this? And you already got the fish on the hook.
That's right.
Whereas if I come out and start saying, I need money, I heard you have some money, or I'm hoping you have some money, that may come off a little brash and could maybe hurt rapport at the initial first meeting of a relationship.
Yeah. Another thing that we touched on when we were talking about it in office hours 2 weeks ago was many folks will be open to building that relationship with you. But again, it takes time. And what we don't do a great job of early in our business is creating a process where those people have an opportunity to see our deals over time, even if that's not the deal for them. And so in the same way that we monitor sellers, in the same way we monitor buyers, lenders are a third category of contacts that we need to regularly have involved in our business. So for us, in our distribution of lending opportunities, all of our lenders, all of the folks who have elected to be on our lending list, they will get those emails over time. And even if it's not for them, they know that we're doing these deals, right? And so
I think that's the key point, is like, does a lender want to work with someone that does 1 or 2 deals a year?
Generally.
Totally. But they do, because it's an opportunity for them to make money. But think about how strong that relationship needs to be, because it's not something that you do full time. It's not something that you have 100 at-bats in.
Right.
Whereas I may throw 100 at-bats out there showing you that we're trying to do these projects, and the first 50 may not work for you, but we're consistent in our product. The numbers, you're going to get a pretty good idea of what we look for compared to what you expect as a lender, and those conversations start to happen. I know you handle the lending side mostly, but I've of course discussed lending with people as well, and I've talked to people who have said, yeah, man, those first 5 that I got once you put me on the list were not for me, but I definitely see the prospect that you guys have, and if you have something that's maybe a little bit less of a purchase price, I might be more willing to do that. So it's like, You need to find out their buy box. But if we're dealing with 200 lenders, can you remember all 200 people's buy box?
No, for sure.
Not necessarily. So having those relationships where you can call them every 2-3 weeks just to say hi actually allows you to send those emails that they're not interested in a little bit more, because there's a true relationship, not just a take my business, take my business,
That's
take
right.
my business.
So, Renard, I hope that kind of shows generally what the approach is. Then we get a question about buying turnkey rentals, and if the 1% rule is a great rule to determine if it's a good deal or not.
Okay. Turnkey rentals are amazing in the right market. Charlotte, probably not the right market for it.
Why is that?
Purchase price is very high. So the higher the purchase price, the higher the mortgage payment. The higher the mortgage payment, the less we have spread for cash flow.
Yeah.
So, and we've talked about before, like once you get to that 280, 300-ish number, the 1% rule really starts to break apart, because I can't charge $3,500 a month for a 2,400 square foot home.
Right.
So turnkey rentals are great in cash flow markets, Midwest, Deep South, things like that. But one of the nice things about turnkey rentals is you can actually be a little bit more flexible, in my opinion, with the 1% rule, because everything's brand new. So you don't need to allocate as much cost for repairs, capital expenditures, things like that. So while our operating costs change a little bit, it improves our cash flow, which should actually benefit us more so.
Yeah. So, and just for folks watching out there, the 1% rule says if I'm buying it for $100,000 and it brings in $1,000 in rent, that would meet the 1% rule. And if it brought in more than $1,000, it would exceed the 1% rule. And if it brought in less than $1,000, it would underperform the 1% rule.
So 1% rule just generically is it has to rent for at least 1% of the purchase
That's
price
right.
gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so what we would say is that's a very good rule of thumb, but it's not a replacement for true underwriting. So we still need to do, let's go with our gross rent. Let's take out
Vacancy,
Maintenance.
property management. You definitely want to, so in our business, we underwrite 10% for maintenance.
Yep.
But we blanket that, but it's really 5% continuous maintenance and 5% capital expenditures, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, if it's turnkey, I'm probably going to remove that 5% of capital expenditures and maybe bump up the 5% maintenance to like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So a little bit more room to do repairs as they come, but I'm still making more cash flow in the net.
That's right. So you just still want to do your true underwriting, but the 1% rule is often a good indicator that it could be a deal that'll cash flow properly at different price points.
So our boy Barrett, he's back.
He's back. Let's go. He was our leading
Shining pupil last week.
Yeah, he did
for
great
sure.
last week.
Good to see you, man. Glad to have you back. He wants to know how are investors going to invest in rentals here in Charlotte, considering the 1% rule is nearly impossible.
Yeah. I mean,
I know what you're going to say. So talk to them, not me.
Yeah. There's really a couple of quadrants of reasons why people purchase investment real estate. Cash flow is certainly one of them. Appreciation is another. Debt pay down is another. And then tax benefits is another. So even if the cash flow quadrant doesn't get populated very strongly, the others can still be pretty strong. And the strange part about real estate that kind of gets missed when we're in this conversation is if you took real estate nationally and took all of those benefits together, real estate's actually a relatively stable asset class. Meaning, if you look at Cincinnati and you compared it to Los Angeles and took all of those benefits and averaged them, they're generally actually pretty level because large amount of capitals remove any inequalities. Now, one is still going to be a heavily cash flow dependent market, and one's probably going to be pretty dependent on appreciation. Mm-hmm. But those things get equaled out. So what we would say is we're still getting great deals in Charlotte, right? Like you have 2 on the board right now that we're looking to purchase directly.
That's right.
And the reason is we're getting what we think is an effective amount of equity at purchase. We think we're going to be able to do a fair amount of value add rehabilitation, and then we're still going to be able to cash flow a small amount on top of the debt service.
That's right. And I think the big thing to keep in mind is, as you mentioned, cash flow is just one of the quadrants. And if we don't like to bank on appreciation,
Sure.
of course not,
Sure.
but if we're holding for the long term, it's something that we can assume by the end of our debt service, there will have been some increase, right?
Sure.
Especially in the Charlotte market.
Yep.
One of the nice things about owning a rental in Charlotte is rent numbers have been steadily increasing here over the last few years.
Yes.
And the demand for housing is going higher, especially for single family homes. There have been tons of these 60 to 100 unit apartment complexes coming up, but we know that most people want to progress from an apartment to a home, even if it's a rental.
That's right.
Right? So rentals are going to continue to be in demand and rents will continue to increase. It's not going to be parabolic where it never just stops or levels off, but it will continue to increase.
Right.
So if I'm going to look at a deal today and it's not going to cash flow, it's going to negative cash flow to $200.
That's right.
I want to know if I can afford that burn for a year and raise the rent $100.
That's right.
So now I'm only negative 100 for the next year, while of course I'm getting those other three benefits: the principal buy down, tax depreciation, maybe a little increase in appreciation. But within 5 to 6 years, I should be cash flow positive, or at a minimum net neutral,
Yeah.
and I'm still getting those other three benefits.
That's right.
So when I'm looking at an investment property in Charlotte, obviously if you can buy it deep enough, you'll cash flow,
Yeah.
right? Because the mortgage payment will be lower.
Yes.
But if it's not the case, I still have 3 of those other 4 quadrants that I can benefit from, as long as I can sustain the burn of the cash flow.
That's right. Yep. And that burn of the cash flow is really the thing that investors generally will have a hard time outrunning.
Yep.
And that's often the item of sensitivity that will cause an investor to make a decision to keep or release a property.
Exactly. I am paying attention, but I wanted to bring this up because our friend Lori, she just posted a interesting link about the performance of the Charlotte Metro.
Yeah.
And it talked about how the Charlotte Metro area has seen a 66% drop in investor purchases of homes over the last year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but I think it's also a little bit of a paradigm shift, because how you and I operate, it feels very much as business as usual.
Yeah.
And was that because of the iBuyers in the area? 100%.
Yeah.
But I think it's still pretty telling that the fear and the concern of the market has played into certain investors' minds.
Yeah.
And I think every single lesson we've been taught, whether or not we've been able to practice it, is that millionaires and wealth is made in a recession, not in a boom. And it's the people who are able to act when times are scary that are able to flourish when times are safe. So yes, I just wanted to bring that piece up because I don't want to discount the fact that there is some fear in the Charlotte market, but I think the fear comes from more people who aren't solidified in their processes and trust themselves to be able to get the right deal.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. I do think a significant pullback of investor activity that they're going to capture in those types of articles are the iBuyer behaviors. You know, we've seen folks like Zillow pull back. That's national news. We've seen folks like Open Door and others pull back. But then again, we had, Christine was out at a showing yesterday and had like 20 local investor teams show up and at least look at an opportunity.
That's right.
Now, all of them weren't, to be transparent, all of them aren't bidding on that exact opportunity, but at least 20 of them thought it was important enough to come and look at it. So there definitely still is activity. There's still buyers. The right deals are still moving, and even on market, deals that are properly priced are still getting competitive offers. So I really think, does the market require some hesitation and some kind of a methodical approach? Of course. But is it a thing that we're kind of pulling back or having hesitation of overall as a strategy? I don't think so.
No, I don't really think so either. I mean, Barrett brought up another point saying most of Charlotte prices plus interest rate meets some of the four, but the coverage and cash flow needed to cover the debt is so far off it would net zero or become a liability, not an asset. And I think that's true as long as we're looking very short term.
Yep.
It's all about being able to control the burn.
That's right.
It's all about being able to control the burn.
That's right. And you know, that's one reason why our approach to leverage is what it is. You know, sometimes we're making decisions to refi properties, which is impacting our cash flow by say $300 or $400 in a month, but then giving us access to $40,000 or $50,000 of capital to go and redeploy. In most cases, we're going to make that decision.
Well, it's funny because as you know, my mom's in real estate. She's on the agent side, but more retail. Doesn't really play with investors. But I was telling her about our deal in Charlotte and how when all said and done, we'll be able to refi out, hopefully north of 50 grand. But the cost of doing that means that we'll probably be losing a couple $100 a month cash flow.
That's right.
And my mom could not understand why we would choose to go negative on the cash flow purposefully.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was trying to explain to her, and she understood it, but doesn't mean her risk profile matches, is
That's right.
if I lose $200 a month because of high interest rates, which means higher mortgage payments for 2 years,
Yep.
I've lost roughly $5 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you pay $5 grand today to have access to the 50 grand to buy more real estate today?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes.
For us.
For us.
For us, it's
Now,
yes.
if I was barely skating by and couldn't afford to lose $200 a month, it's a different story.
That's right.
But we can, and we know we can buy 2 or 3 more houses with that 50 grand in forms of down payments. And it's a very easy decision for us to make, especially knowing that we'll be able to increase rents over time.
Bingo. So that's where that all sits. Guys, great questions. Thank you so much. Getting a question over here, talking about that hesitation that we're seeing from buyers. And Jonathan says, how are we working with buyers who are expressing that hesitation? And often that hesitation is in the form of lower price, right? They're pricing in their risk, and so they're saying, Michael, look, you just put this out at 150. I'm probably a buyer at 135 instead. You know, and I'll take the first hit at this one, which is, I think what we're seeing is just some buyers are concerned and some are not as concerned. And what we're finding is we're building new relationships with those buyers who are less concerned in today's market versus relationships we probably were working with over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I think, generally speaking, I've been getting more hesitancy on sellers than buyers. And the hesitancy isn't even from selling their home. Their hesitancy is from being able to buy another home. So I do think that people who are trying to get into flipping, this is a concern, right? Because the people who are concerned about the market climate today are going to be concerned about it over the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And their behavior may not change much.
Yep.
On the seller side, they want to get out of their home, but they don't want to pay an 8% mortgage on their new home when their current one is 3.5%.
Yeah.
So there is fear on both sides. I think to be effective as a wholesaler or just a negotiation in general, is that their biggest problem? If fear is their biggest problem, you're not going to be able to serve them very well.
Yeah.
But if their biggest problem is trying to earn money and they need to learn some of the skill sets to counteract these measures, then we can make some action plans to get started.
Maybe the last point for Jonathan's question is also that has led us to purchase more properties than wholesale, right? So we're not getting the response in the market that we would like on a given property, and we're saying, look, I'm not going to pass on this opportunity for the $4,500 it'll create for the business, so let's take this one down and hold it. And so far, that's worked pretty effectively for us.
Absolutely.
You want to hit one of these?
Yeah.
One of the-
Unless, any others, of course,
No.
come in, but we can hit some. Let's talk about finding a mentor. I think a good amount of people know my story in terms of how I kind of connected with you. But a big part of a mentor-mentee relationship is there has to be openness on both sides.
Yeah.
I think every mentee wants a mentor. Not everyone who can mentor wants to and or should mentor. You know what I mean? Whatever you're showing, people can see that. So
That's okay.
just let me know. So like, I came in looking for a mentor. It happened to coincide with a time where you were open to taking on a mentee. Maybe talk a little bit about like, how can you sell yourself to someone who maybe is on the fence or isn't really open at the moment to a mentor, to being a mentor? Because that's the tough thing. Like, everyone wants to find a mentor. How do you find someone who wants to be a mentor?
Well, I think, your and my relationship started more like, and you and I have talked really openly about this, but like our relationship started in like more of a mentee-mentor relationship, and now it's very, very balanced, and you're giving guidance to me and I'm giving some guidance to you over time, and that's working really effectively for us. But when you first reached out to me, it was definitely like you were looking for some guidance from someone who had more experience, right? And I think what you did that was effective, at least for the approach with me, is you tried to look for ways to provide value to someone who had some of the information you were looking for. So it wasn't just like a, hey, can I buy you coffee? Like, I think the days of reaching out to someone and saying, can I buy you coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Like, those days are gone. Like, there's not a lot of people who are effective in their business that have time for something like that.
I think that's true in large metros, large markets, because there's so many meetups. There's so many networking events where it's like, dude, if you haven't seen us at one of those and come up to us, or haven't come to the office hours that we host weekly, or jumped on this on Friday, then like, why are we trying to make time for you?
Yeah.
Like, we've done it a lot already.
Yeah.
But if you're in a smaller market where there aren't as many, you've got to flex whatever tools you can to get someone to sit down with you.
Definitely try it.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's the worst they can do?
What's the worst they can do? Say no. I had someone do something interesting this week that I hadn't seen. They said, hey, I'd love to share lunch with you, but I'm in San Diego. Can I DoorDash you lunch? And can we have a Zoom while you're eating? And I was like, that's an approach. That's an approach.
I would have said yes.
So I think, but the mentor conversation, I think, is kind of a couple of different things.
Okay.
First, can you find someone who you can ask for guidance in your local market? Ways to do that. Meetup. Go to every meetup that's in your market.
Where do you find those?
Well,
Meetup.com.
Meetup.com. Go on Facebook. Look for Facebook groups that focus on the geographic area that you're operating in. So if you're in Louisville, Kentucky, then go on Facebook and look for Louisville, Kentucky real estate investors and see what groups pop up and join all those groups. Ask all of those people where are the meetups. Contact attorneys in those areas, see if they're hosting meetups. Contact other lenders in those areas, see if they're hosting meetups. So there's just a lot of opportunities to connect with people in those ways. That's an informal mentorship. And then a second thing we get asked about pretty often is there are paid communities that offer guidance.
Yep.
And what is your opinion about those communities? So that feedback is often a little more hesitant for us because it has to be right for the individual. Very rarely is someone who's starting at zero going to be quite well served from dropping 30 or 40 grand on a coaching program like that.
Of course.
Like, that's not generally going to be in that person's interest. Are there people who will benefit from the type of program that costs $30,000 or $40,000 to join? Absolutely. Generally speaking, those are people who have a little bit of momentum in the business and generally paying those types of fees are going to move them forward in their progress by years, right? So like if I can buy myself forward 3 or 4 years by taking advantage of other people's systems and processes and those things, then yes, I absolutely may need to consider that.
Yeah. I think the one big thing to keep in mind, and maybe it's not the best that I'm saying this because I did get kind of lucky, but most mentorships don't organically happen in a one-on-one setting, especially in like skilled fields like this. Like initially, if you're part of a 20-person group that's taught by one dude or one chick, it doesn't matter if you have one-on-one time versus one-on-20 time. You're still learning a hell of a lot more quickly than you would have by yourself. And by getting some of that knowledge, you actually may be able to show off a little bit more to someone who may be enticed in a one-on-one capacity. So just thinking about it as you don't just go straight to the top of the flagpole. Sometimes there's some growth in there as well.
For sure. And so for those of you who are either watching this now or watching it later, I would share 2 specific things that people can do. First, we have the Exchange Real Estate Networking Meetup coming up next Thursday. So that's one place that people can come out. Our friends who are doing creative financing are going to be talking about the approaches that they're using in today's market. These are some of the top operators in our local market. So even if they didn't care about coming to meet Michael Fishman, they're going to get to come meet Audie. They're going to get to come meet Dion.
Chad.
They're going to get to come meet Chad. There are people who are really doing deals. So even if Michael's full of shit, at least these guys are going to be there and they can connect with them.
And then they can connect with them and realize that I'm actually full of shit, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's funny. So Barrett, and then I actually want to jump, but Barrett just said the biggest problem in today's coaching, since it's not it's not personal, it's consumption dysfunction, and it's
Consuming too much.
Yeah, it's just everyone. You're getting 500 things. They all sound similar, but they're all slightly different. And who the hell do I listen to? Okay, let me go try this guy now.
Right.
Let me try this guy now.
Which is actually one reason why being in certain communities and receiving consistent guidance for at least a time period until you can test those
That's right.
is probably a better approach. Like we have very good friends in the business, right? So if you went and watched one of their YouTube channels and then watch the other YouTube channel and then watch the other one and you're trying to deploy all of that it's taken them each years to build, and you're just kind of haphazardly deploying each one of those, you're not going to be as effective.
And that's the whole like, I'm bummed because I'm not doing the same thing as my IG guru.
Yeah.
I'm gonna burn out. I'm gonna get all upset. And I'm gonna switch avenues, and that happens more often than we wish.
Before moving on, I want to mention one other thing, which is if you guys are in the local market, if you're in the Southeast and you're interested in learning more about a mentorship community, our community is having their quarterly meeting in Charleston, South Carolina. If you are either one of 2 profiles will fit really well here. If you're an investor who's doing a couple of deals and are looking to scale that into a systematized process that's repeatable, there's a place for you in that community. And then if you're a high-level operator who's doing a lot of deals, there's also an escalated community that's in that group, both of which you can go to our link tree on Instagram, go to the very bottom and look for the Flip Talk link and jump on there, or DM us directly and we can share some details. It's August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Charleston, South Carolina. So if you're local, you won't have to pay any travel expenses to get there. There may be some cost to be involved in the community, and we can talk with you about that offline.
Cool. All right. So Dontel asked a few minutes ago, how much more valuable is infill land with the citywide UDO zoning changes?
Huge.
Can you quantify it yet?
I don't know if we can quantify it yet. We haven't received, I don't know if we can quantify it, others may, but we haven't received enough feedback from builders about what potential that creates. But at the end of the day, it is relatively easy to get your mind around the approach, which is if a builder wants land to be at some portion of their ultimate cost. So just for simple numbers, if we're selling a property for $300,000 and our builder wants to be at say 15% land cost on the $300,000, that math is really easy.
45.
45? Michael got to it, 45. If in the future they can now build 2 of those same product on that same land because it can be more condensed. Now that builder, instead of just paying 45, would be willing to pay up to 90.
They should be willing to pay up to 90.
But that's the basic math, right? And so as we're talking with builders now, we're trying to understand how that'll impact their interest. But that's the way to think about that.
Yep, and I think first off, this just went into effect yesterday.
Right.
Right, so it's a brand new thing. We haven't talked to builders yet on how they're changing their purchasing requirements, but I think it's very. You should be keen to notice that right now is going to be a time where builders and developers are going to try and take advantage of every situation that they can. So they may theoretically be able to pay up to 90, but they're going to tell you they're only willing to pay 60.
That's right.
You know, so you really want to talk with different developers and not asking what they're willing to pay, but you want to ask what their costs are, because then you can back end reverse engineer what it actually would be willing to pay and do your numbers that way.
Yeah.
But you know, again, some properties you're going to be able to build this a single family, some a duplex, some a triplex. It all depends on size of the lot, and those values will be different just as they are now. They're definitely going to go up. I just don't know if it's going to be a pound for pound increase.
That's right.
My guess is initially no.
It'll be kind of watered down a little bit,
Yeah.
which is okay. One thing we did suggest in office hours yesterday was that probably is a reason to resurrect most of our land leads.
Which is why I'm so pumped we got one yesterday in Matthews.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
I don't know if we're wholesale on that one.
That one might stay in house.
But okay, so Barrett follows up with, what are our thoughts and actions we take on opportunity zones around the metro?
Okay.
Tell everyone what an opportunity zone is, though.
Yeah, so opportunity zones are tax advantaged investment opportunities. Generally, that designation is by census district,
Okay.
not by streets or not. So those maps end up looking sometimes like a bit of a gerrymandered, map instead of just like a real clean area. But we get excited about the term opportunity zone. However, opportunity zone investment requires that you buy for a price, so say $200,000, and that you invest again your full purchase price. So it doesn't often fit the bill for a single family home. Meaning very rarely are we going to buy a single family home for $250,000 and then put $250,000 additional dollars into it. It happens,
Sure.
Especially at the lower price point. But generally speaking, the investment profile doesn't fit that for a single family home. And to take advantage of it, you have to have a taxable occurrence that you're deferring taxes on as a result of that investment. So while it's an interesting investment idea, I think those people who are able to truly take advantage of the opportunity is a smaller pool than most typical investors.
So it's a tax depreciation play above all else.
It is. And you have to have a large taxable event that you're really trying to pull down to really take advantage of it.
So Barrett followed up with that. He was just wondering, in those zones, are the lots going to be worth a lot more? And theoretically, you would say yes, but the opportunity zones currently around Charlotte are in Gastonia and in Lancaster. So the UDO for the zoning is only Charlotte. It's just Mecklenburg County.
Yeah.
So we won't see that impact at the opportunity zone in Gastonia or Lancaster at the current time. I don't know if those counties will.
There's some, I remember on
there is like
along 85,
Yeah.
like the 85 corridor as it comes down towards Gastonia has some.
Okay.
So there may be a handful of them, but just an example, sometimes when I've looked at the map in the past, I've been surprised that places that we see a lot of activity, like Greer Heights as an example, like some of Hinderley Park, like that those areas aren't as integrated into that plan because of the description by census district. You know, so that's interesting. So just to answer the question, I don't know, is really like, we'll see, you know, like it depends. I hate those answers, but that's kind of where that falls. So Barrett, I hope that's helpful. I do think there are individuals who will benefit from that. I think they just have to be operating at a bit larger scale than most of the folks who we interact with. So I've got a question over here. Let me read through it real quick and see if I can get the gist of it. Okay, so Jonathan, who is one of our really good friends, is on Instagram and he's saying one of his major clients is a major US builder. They really haven't slowed down. They've really kept their foot on the pedal. They have started building investor communities that are completely built for rent, right? So the whole community is going to be built for one person, and then they're going to rent out every one of the units. And then they've even just picked up 2 major lots in Estonia, so it's definitely a growing market out there. All of that is consistent with what we're seeing in the market, meaning we are still in the Charlotte market specifically. Nationally is a different story, but in the Charlotte market specifically, we're still in a state where inventory is below historic growth levels. And so that's why we're still seeing support from a pricing perspective to continue to push prices upward, even if it's at a slower rate than we've seen historically.
That's right.
And so that is exactly, Jonathan, that's exactly in line with what we're seeing in the market. Not surprised to hear that. As just to point out one thing, even in your question, you're saying this builder purchased some land, built townhouses, and then sold those to someone who's going to operate them as build to rent. Well, that's not adding inventory into the housing market for purchase.
That's right.
Right. So that's affecting rental inventories, but not purchase inventories.
I think we covered everything on this list. Got a couple of minutes left if anyone wants to throw a last minute question in there.
I had one come up yesterday,
Sure.
so we'll talk about that while we watch for one or two more questions here. Had somebody grab us at the end of office hours yesterday, and she said, "Hey, I've just gotten my real estate license. I'm technically in North Carolina considered a provisional broker, and so for folks who are watching outside of North Carolina, being a provisional broker is kind of a probationary status where you're a little more limited on what you can do, and you can remove that status by completing 3 specific continuing education classes. So that has to be done." And she said, "Should I keep my license? What should I do?" The feedback that we give is we don't think that you're required to have a real estate license to be an effective real estate investor. And in fact, a lot of folks who are not licensed have a little bit more areas that they can kind of operate in than those of us who are licensed.
Right.
So that's certainly true. So the feedback we generally give to folks is if you're not licensed today, don't rush out and get the license. Learn to become an effective real estate investor, and then later down the line, choose if you want to bolt on being an agent as well. Like that's generally the advice. Now, if you're someone who wants to go and show homes to people and that's a desirable thing for you, then yeah,
Right.
maybe go and get the license. But generally speaking, you don't require a real estate license to be a really great real estate investor. There are some limitations when you are licensed, and they may create some additional hurdles or landmines that you kind of need to avoid a little bit.
That's right.
So, not sure if you got any other question that came in.
I did not get anything else.
I'm pretty good over here, so double check real quick. Anything else, guys? Okay. With that, we'll wrap today's Power Hour. Guys, thanks for joining us for Power Hour today. Next week, we may need to think about this. Next week, we have that 1 o'clock we may need to reschedule. I just realized this. But anyways, that's we'll table Power Hour for now. Thanks so much for coming along, guys. Appreciate you guys. Next week is the exchange and office hours, so we will see you Thursday.
Go Vikings, especially to you, Jonathan.
Take care.
Later, guys.